Hey guys, what's up? Hope everybody's having a good day out there today, and welcome back here to Advanced Bass Fishing. We're going to be talking about retrieves today, the different type of retrieves that you need to use on your lures based upon a wide range of variables to help generate strikes. And there's a lot to it, guys. The type of retrieve that you use is dependent upon a ton of different factors. So we're going to give you guys a good seminar today on that, and I think it's going to help you guys generate more strikes from having different type of retrieves in your repertoire. Also, guys, I don't know if you've seen it out at the on my store at the bottom of the page on all my YouTube channels. I got merchandise here for sale. I know this is Advanced Bass Fishing, but we got intuitive angling T-shirts like this one here. You can see hats. We got hooded sweatshirts, hoodies, just a bunch of different stuff. If you guys are interested in getting some intuitive angling merchandise on my other channel there, you can do that by just going to the store at the bottom of the page here at the Advanced Bass Fishing channel. And also, guys, just a big thank you out there to everybody that's helped support Advanced Bass Fishing by using all the links I put in the description. Much appreciated with that. Okay, guys, let's talk about lure retrieves, different type of retrieves that you use based upon a wide range of factors. Now, one of the things about it is lure retrieves, how the cadence that you put on your lure, the speed of retrieve, the amount of consistent retrieve versus stop and go, all that plays a factor in triggering bass to bite. So we're going to get into sort of a wide range of different scenarios today to sort of go over the best one for different situations. Okay, now when you're talking about retrieves, you're talking about here's the sort of like the wheelhouse of it. You got just your basic straight retrieve, whether it be a slow, medium, or fast retrieve. Then you have stop and go retrieves, which is pretty simple. And then you have certain elements of like a pull and a twitch retrieve. Now all those have certain places based upon some stuff we're going to talk about. So let's just go through each one of them, talk about when you want to use certain retrieves. Okay, let's get into slow retrieves. We'll start out slow. A slow retrieve is used for a lot of different reasons. It has to do with your bait category that you're using and some different type of conditions. In general, your slow retrieves on a lure are for the ones that the fish have to have some time to find that lure or look at that lure. So example of like a prime lure to have a slow retrieve on would be a swim bait or a glide bait. Now this is a bait that fish look at visually, and with a swim bait and a glide bait, you simply can't use a very fast presentation because they sort of roll off to one side. But for me, I use a slow retrieve most any time I'm fishing. A swim bait or a glide bait has a slow retrieve. Top waters can also have a slow retrieve. A lot of times if you're dealing with a little bit more off-colored water that you're fishing a top water in, say for example, you got water visibility of 2 feet, a lot of times slowing down your top waters can get a lot of bites. Slowing down the top water, if the water's a little bit cooler, can help you out as well. And when we're talking about retrieves, I'm not really talking about a bottom bouncing retrieve. These are more of like lures that you reel through the water column. So we're not really going to get into like a jig or a plastic worm or anything like that. And also slow retrieves, they tend to work a little bit better in cooler water that is also off-colored. That's sort of the combination with that. You really don't have to use like a slow retrieve in cooler water that's clear, but if I've got water visibility of say under 3 feet and that water temperature is under 50-55 degrees, a lot of times I'm using a slow retrieve with that. But again, when you're talking about retrieves, a lot of it is just experimentation. I'm going to give you some foundations, but a lot of times it just depends on what the bass is going to do. Okay, the next retrieve is a medium retrieve. Now, a medium retrieve is probably the most popular retrieve to use on any type of a moving bait. It's just what it says. It's just a medium retrieve. It's just, reeling that reel handle just about like that. This is probably the most appealing retrieve for fish to hit. Now, within that medium retrieve, this is usually when a lot of people use a stop and go retrieve, a medium to medium fast. Now, most of the time, I do use a stop and go retrieve with a medium retrieve. Very seldom will I use a medium retrieve with just a straight retrieve. In fact, very seldom at all do I just use a straight retrieve. I've usually got some type of variation, just to mix it up a little bit. A pause, a twitch, speed up, slow down, stop and go. But a medium retrieve works in a wide range of conditions. In fact, there's very, very few conditions that a medium retrieve will not work. Now, the opposite end of that is a fast retrieve. A fast retrieve is when you want to generate a strike out of a reaction strike. Now, this is like a really good technique to use in warmer water. If you're fishing water temperatures that are over like 75 degrees, actually in the late spring to early fall, a fast retrieve is going to generate you a lot more strikes. It's just because of the mood and the personality of the fish. It doesn't really matter what the water clarity is. I've caught a lot of fish in hot water, summertime, fast retrieve on a square bill crankbait. I've caught them on a fast retrieve with like a walking topwater, a fast retrieve with a spinnerbait. It's just a really good time to use it. A big crankbait, like a big deep diving crankbait in the summertime, you'll get a lot more bites on it by using a fast retrieve on it. You'll get, if you were throwing a big deep diving crankbait in the summertime and you were using a fast retrieve and the guys with you were using a slow or medium retrieve, you'll catch twice the fish on it with a fast retrieve. Also with the fast retrieve, I'm using the stop and go as well. A stop and go retrieve on a fast bait is sort of necessary to give the fish just that slight hesitation to go after the bait, because when you're reeling that bait fast through the water column and it's coming through there at a consistent speed, just like a hesitation, like a stop and go, just like a half turn, it breaks up that consistent movement of the bait, whether it be whatever retrieve, and it's just gonna generate a lot more strikes with it. Now, the other two would be some type of a twitch and a pull retrieve. Now, a lot of times a twitch and a pull retrieve, this is gonna be on my lures, like a spinnerbait and a jerkbait. I do a lot of twitching and pulling on a jerkbait, but it doesn't matter if I'm using a slow, medium, or fast retrieve. And also, guys, a twitch retrieve. And when I'm talking about twitching, I'm talking about throwing that lure out there and you're reeling it and you just shake your rod tip, you just shake it like that, just twitch it. This is a really good technique on topwater lures or spinnerbaits or chatterbait. So if I'm reeling a spinnerbait through the water out there, I'm never reeling a spinnerbait just straight through the water, ever. The entire length of my cast with a spinnerbait, I'm either twitching the thing or I'm stop and go retrieving it. Same with the chatterbait. I don't ever just reel a chatterbait straight through the water. I'm usually twitching it or stop and go retrieve with it. If you talk to any of the expert spinnerbait and chatterbait anglers, especially the spinnerbait guys, that's exactly what they do. They have that bait shaking and twitching and fluttering and moving all the time. That's a big deal with spinnerbait fishing, because spinnerbaits are probably one of the most popular bass fishing lures of all time, yet they don't get the attention a lot of people used to give them years ago because they're not as productive. And the reason they're not as productive for most people is most people use them with a straight retrieve. So on your spinnerbaits and your chatterbaits and stuff like that, try that twitching, pulling type of a deal. But ultimately, like I said, that's just a generalized foundation with it. There's two pieces of advice I'll leave you guys with. Number one, experiment. It's like, I have seen situations where there's always an exception to the rule. Sometimes just the mood and the personality of the fish, they want a certain type of retrieve. And that varies from day to day. And the thing that can change that is like fishing pressure, your light intensity, the wind that you have, air temperatures, water temperatures, all those play a factor. And ultimately, you don't know unless you experiment. So the best way to experiment is, if you're catching a few fish, like with a medium retrieve or something, just experiment a little bit with your retrieves. It makes a big difference. I'll give you guys a prime example. I was fishing a tournament down at Table Rock Lake years ago, throwing a crankbait in May down there. And I wasn't catching much on it. I was just, catching a few here and there. And all of a sudden, I'd made one cast out there with the crankbait and it missed my mark by a long way. And I reeled it in super fast just to get it where I could make another cast. And I caught one as I was burning this crankbait in. And I thought to myself, well, is that just a fluke deal, or is that, something to it? And I just said, I didn't have anything to lose, so I'm just going to try it. So I started burning this crankbait super fast, where I had been catching or fishing a medium, retrieve on there, and just started whacking them. And I wasn't catching anything on a medium retrieve before that. So that's just something that you just have to experiment a little bit with it. And finally, guys, you just always experiment with the speed of the retrieve, the cadence of the retrieve, the twitching it, everything that goes along with it, and until you hit on something that works. That's like the biggest thing with it. It's like there's nothing in stone in bass fishing. It's like if you try to control everything and try to say, okay, here's the conditions. I got to use a medium retrieve today because, or I got to use a slow retrieve today because Randy says you need to use a slow retrieve on a glide bait or a swim bait. Yeah, give it a try, but ultimately, just let the fish decide it for yourself. That's the main thing with it. That is the key to catching fish, though, retrieves. It's like when you're talking about lure categories, and it could be slow lures or fast lures both, it's like the big difference between somebody that's really successful in bass fishing versus the people that are just catching a few fish. A lot of times it boils down to the retrieve. I have seen it make such a big difference over and over and over again that it's one of those areas of bass fishing that does not get the attention it deserves. Generating a strike from how you reel your lure in is how you capitalize on reaction strikes. And when I'm talking about reaction strikes, in my opinion, most of the time that a bass strikes a lure, it's out of reaction. It's out of like anger, curiosity, reaction. It's not because they're hungry or they're feeding. They react to it. That's bred into them on a primal level that's been with them for millions of years. That's how they've survived, is just not hesitating at all. Because here's what I'm talking about. If you're a bass and you're sitting by a stump in the water, and you're sitting by that stump because you're hiding there to try to ambush some type of a prey. That prey could be a perch, it could be a shad swimming by, it could be a crawdad crawling along there. And when that prey comes past there, a bass is smart, and they have to decide within a split second, do they want to try to eat that or do they want to ignore it? Because they're not stupid. I mean, bass don't make many mistakes. So it's like they have to decide in a split second whether to go for that lure or not. And therefore, how you retrieve that lure or past that stump that fish is sitting on has a lot to do if you're going to trigger that strike. Now, the trigger mechanism that actually causes the bass to go after that, you don't really know what it is. Again, they could react to a slow retrieve, a medium retrieve, a fast retrieve, a stop and go retrieve, a twitch and pull. That's just an experimentation, but most of the time you can pattern that. So when you finally figure out the best retrieve for the lure that you're using, you can go with it for the rest of the day. Usually it works, all day long with it. So anyway, that's just another aspect of fishing everybody's got to put in their memory banks there, and hope you can use that information, and we'll talk later.